Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier. I'm Alex Simmons, an award-winning writer of mystery and action-adventure tales, and he's Chris Ryan, an award-winning hybrid writer of horror and crime thrillers.
Hey, Alex, how are you? How's it going?
It's all good. It's all good. And let me say it one more time. It's all good.
That's a beautiful thing.
How's it going with you, buddy?
I'm doing all right, exploring, learning, all that sort of stuff. Matter of fact, that led to today's topic.
What is today's topic? What are we sharing today?
As ladies and gentlemen, we here at Tell the Damn Story are always working, even when we're farting around on the social medias. We are always working. So there I was in the jungle. No, I was on either Instagram's stories or Reels or TikTok. I forget. I think it might have been TikTok. And there was a story about new horror reads that came out. And they were like 5 or 7 horror reads you could read in horror stories you can read in one sitting. And they were separate books, and they had the book cover up and then the page count underneath. Like, for example, Haley Piper's great new book was up, and it's about 149 pages or something like that. And I'm looking at this. This is the second or third time I've seen a celebration of shorter books or individually marketed short stories. My Ghosted is an example of that.
He's about to show us. Yes, there it is. Ghosted.
And it's razor thin, ladies and gentlemen. It's a whopping, I guess the story itself is about 30 pages, 29, 30 pages, and that kind of stuff. And it's very inexpensive, but it's a nice little boom. And
quick read.
I reached out to Alex and said, just sent you it was a TikTok. Just sent you a TikTok about short stories and novelettes that stand out as standalone pubs. Nothing longer than 160 pages. Seems to be a new trend. Could be a good topic because, like we said before, we here at TTDS are always working.
Yes, we are. Even when we think we're not, we are.
That's right. Even when we're liking something like Matt Wilderson's new novella that just dropped, it again is the same kind of length, and I think there's an attraction there. And Alex answered.
Yes, I did, because I often answer him when he speaks to me.
Gave us 2 different types of books that we are involved with or were involved with years ago that were about that length.
And one the YA
early career,
right. Yep.
And then earlier than that, it was the kind of stuff that really got us going and started us down the path of, I want to do this. So we're going to talk to you about shorter pieces and how that may be an emerging or re-emerging market that you might want to consider. Here today on Tell the Damn Story.
And for those only listening to this in audio,
always working.
Those of you only listening to this in audio, I want you to know he whipped off his glasses for that dramatic moment. So I just didn't want you to lose that moment there, that poignant moment there.
That's right.
And also, folks, stick around till the end, because we're going to have a little segment that you will find tremendously useful, where we're going to answer some key, let me put it this way, we're going to share some key information that has been requested of us. And I think that you'll find it useful as well. So let's get started.
It's been very popular in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems to be, and I love it because I just dropped City of Woe, which is 350 pages. And coming out this week will be City of Pain, which is almost 400 pages. And now I'm saying, oh, look, they want all the reading on diets.
Yeah, but I have a friend who I talk to periodically, and he's reading the first in a 6-book experience. It's a book about Thomas Jefferson. and
Yeah.
each book is over 300 pages. So there's a market for novels
Oh
and
yeah.
that stature for sure.
Oh
But
yeah.
yes, we're here to talk about
This is a
something that
this
has a
is a
history.
an additional market. There's always a market for novels,
Mhm.
but this is an opportunity where you can put out material and keep yourself out there, keep fresh stuff coming, build your backlog, keep fans satisfied. And it turns out that you and I have worked together on exactly that kind of book in our Blackjack Rapid Reads
Series.
volumes, which are again thin, one sitting reads, right? I think there's about 106 pages driven in red haze, and all the books are about that size. So we're very comfortable here, you
Yeah, and
know?
actually we were a little bit ahead of our time as far as this particular
That's
trend.
right. We'll be rebooting them, bringing them out again and saying, hey,
Hey,
for those
absolutely.
of you who missed it,
Yeah.
but there is a history. Alex, you cut your teeth on some of these, and
I'm sorry, am I bleeding? No. Oh,
no, they're
yes.
fine.
Yes.
And I was able to do one of these particular works of very popular fiction, thanks to your largesse. And who was the editor? Oh my God.
Let's
He
let's lay,
just passed. He just passed.
let's lay
He-
let yeah, I know who you're talking about. Let's
yeah.
lay a little bit of a pathway for folks. So first off, I think I've said, I know Chris had probably said this to students and people that he's trained, and I certainly have said this to my students and clients, that in order to be considered a writer, you do not have to write a novel. That short stories are quite valid. And so, A, don't think, oh gosh, I guess I have to do this small thing now. Because no, that's a legitimate market in and of itself. So that's one.
Right.
Two, again, as Chris alluded, this is not a new trend. This is something that, in terms of Chris and I both, when we were coming up at different stages in time and
Yeah.
space, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, we walked a similar path in terms of the material we read.
Yes.
And some of
Yes.
that was the pulp-esque stories or reprints of pulp stories, which were also about 140 to 160 pages in length.
Yeah.
They were meant to be quick reads. In
Right.
fact, the size of them, digest or paperback size, were meant to be able to pop into your back pocket on your way to work. You could read it on the bus or the train or whatever.
And
So,
I will tell you, Alex,
yes.
I ruined many copies of The Shadow and Doc Savage, carrying it around in my back pocket and sitting down in different places and just crinkling it up. Not know we didn't know that people would want to keep these and
No, no. I mean, and
collectors
again,
and stuff.
like
But yeah,
the comic books, yeah, you can collect these things, but they were meant to be devoured. They were
yeah,
meant
yeah,
to be entertaining and enjoyment and escapism and all that. So again, short stories, whether they're action, adventure, mystery, horror, or romance, were meant to be consumed. So the
yes,
140, 160 page count is very cool and very digestible. So that's one.
yes.
The second category or arena in which, and this is what Chris was alluding to a moment ago,
I
that
was
he and I
eluding my
both,
butt off.
yes,
Yeah.
we both have written for, was the what's called the middle grade and YA market of books. So middle grade is for children or young people 8 to 12 or 13-ish, and then YA is 13 to 18. All right. So we both have written material for those two particular categories.
Are
And
we
again,
allowed to name what that?
I don't know, actually. I don't know that it's a problem anymore. At the time,
It
you
was
were
a big. It was
big
secret.
secret because, of course, everybody believed that the person whose name is on the cover of these books had been writing these books since 1927. You know, it's 1990s and 2000, and that person is still sitting at their typewriter
Right.
pounding
Right.
out these
Yeah, let
stories.
me free.
Yeah.
So can we tell them or no?
Go ahead, drop it. What the hell? Yes, there we go. For those of
The
you who can
Hardy
see this,
Boys.
yep.
So I got to write one Hardy Boys called Terminal Shock, which Frank and Joe put the bite, BYTE, on a case of computer chaos. And that was what, 152 pages,
Nice log
right?
line.
Yeah, that was the log line. Yeah. Bobbsey twins, Nancy Drew,
Yep.
all of these were about that length traditionally. And it just felt like a normal length, very consumable. I would, man, how many did we read of those? Or how many of those, like you said, the early pulps that were reprinted as novels for us, right? But they
Mm-hmm.
were printed on that cheap paper, not
Newsprint
quite
paper, yeah,
pulp.
originally, yeah.
Yeah. And I just loved the smell, the feel of those pages. That's probably part of why I want to, and why I love putting out the books that I do in paperback. It's just,
Right.
oh my God.
But one of the things I want to point out again for those who are thinking, oh, he mentioned the Bobbsey twins, he mentioned Nancy Drew, those are kiddie things. Wrong. However you may be thinking of them, the books that Chris and I worked on were legitimate mystery stories.
Right.
Subsequently, they not only had a beginning, middle, and an end in terms of the baseline story, but the mysteries had to be, because that's the way Chris and I are, and that's the way the editors that we were working with are. They had to actually have legitimate clues, the
Oh
characters
yeah.
to make sense, the dialogue had to ring true. All of those things were still a requirement of the writing. So you still had to structure the story properly, pace the story properly, develop your characters properly. Yes, you're using characters that have been used for years, but
Right.
you are now writing the story. So what are you bringing to the table to make those characters come to life in this story, which is a challenge because, again, like I said, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, how many times have people read this character? What do they have in their minds as a perception of these characters? And then here you come in 1990s and 2000s writing. Is it the same old? Familiar aspects, yes, but you've got to bring some freshness to the page. And so that was what
Right.
we were required to do. So you mentioned BYTE, and that was the computer reference, right?
Yes.
Because that was that era.
Right. Because they called it bites, right? And that
Mhm.
was, yeah, it was my first experience with having to deal with a character Bible or a book Bible, what Joe and Frank could or could not do. And like Robert McKee says, limitations are actually inspirational.
Mhm.
So once I knew what I couldn't do, it helped launch
Can you
what
can
we
you
could do.
elaborate? Can you elaborate a little bit more? Just what's a book Bible, that sort of thing?
Let's go with, say, Batman, right? When you get hired on a Batman, they give you the Batman Bible. And he does do this, he doesn't do that. He does do that. Batman will never fire weapons. He doesn't kill with guns. And the movie stomped all over that, but we're talking about writing, okay? Comic books, okay, you have to come up with different ways. Then there were different eras, because like in the 50s, just like Felix the Cat, Batman would just reach into his utility belt and pull out exactly what he needed for that particular adventure. But in more modern times, they will specify what things Batman has in his utility belt, and that's it. You can't pull out anti-shock repellent. It's just not part of the arsenal.
I'm loving from the TV show the Bat Shield, which
Yeah.
would somehow go under
Yes,
his
it
cape.
would fold up and just go onto the, like the cape. Cape
Yeah,
had these big pockets or something, or maybe a dimensional hole where
it's
it
a
would just,
portal. There's a portal
well,
under the
no,
cape.
eventually that was part of the gag in that, and the purpose of that particular show was to gently poke fun. And there was a couple of levels to that show. When I saw it, I was a kid and swallowed everything whole. I completely believed that he carried anti-shock repellent and that he had a bat shield in there and the phone and the Shakespeare button. All that was absolute reality to me as you grow up. And now when you get a chance to write, then you look at, all right, here's what you can and cannot do,
Right, and that's the Bible.
and Hulk will speak one way, Thor will speak another way. You never heard Hulk self-reflecting and depressed, simple, oh, people don't leave Hulk alone, right? But he could never do a soliloquy like Adam Warlock,
Mhm.
which was Shakespearean in its depression. He was a manic depressive superhero, fascinating for me when I was a kid. So that's what Bibles are. This is what this character can do, and these are the things they can't do. Frank and Joe were never going to have sex in that book. Not with each other, not with girls, not with the teacher, nobody.
Yep.
They're not, these guys are not, they're about the case, damn it. They don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't cuss.
There are a few other things they don't do, yeah.
They weren't one to throw the first punch, but they could fight if they were attacked or something like that. So it's been a couple of hours since I finished writing that book.
Yeah, a few, yes.
Yeah,
a few.
but that's what a Bible is, right?
Yeah.
And the approach there is to, okay, that's not a restriction. It's a clarification and an inspiration and move there. The pace, they would tell you how many pages. They give you a little span of pages. It's going to be from here to here.
Yeah.
That's it. Some specs. There would be some language. He wouldn't say that. I feel so terrible that I am blanking on the editor's name.
Bill McKay.
Bill McKay. Bill McKay was magic.
Yes, he was.
He was. His voice, the tone of voice, is the tone that every editor in the universe should have, because it was a tone that made you believe you were doing God's work, and it was coming out really well. And we're just going to adjust these few things to really give it to perfection that you were so close to. And there was a lot for me to redo, because it was my first time working within these parameters, and I was learning my way. But to have a Bill McKay, and there were some times where he would say, all right, this word is a perfectly fine word, but in the context of the Hardy Boys, we're going to need to look at a different word. And then we would bat around a couple of different, yes, that one. Or if God bless it, if I were just not getting what was needed, he would say, might I suggest iridescent.
Yeah.
And you could not feel like crap working with Bill McKay. He was such a blessing. God rest his soul. He gave me, you and him gave me that opportunity. And the publisher of, I forgot the book. Oh.
What the name of the people we were working for?
Yeah.
Megabooks. Yes.
And there was a woman there.
All hail Pat and Diana. Yes.
Yes. And they were very, God bless, give him the shot. And yeah, I wish I had done more of those. I'm not sure why, what I should have done to keep going with there. But I know part of it was I was dancing in the street because I had done one, and I may have just kept dancing. That could have been it.
Yeah.
But it was a really beautiful experience. And again, that pacing of 140 to 160, you get to live in the details a little bit, but you don't get bogged down in it.
Right.
You learn pace, keep it going. Everything has, and I still to this day, in some of that influence showing, like my chapters tend to be a scene or sequence, and then that
you're in and you're out. Yeah.
Camera would follow, and then you're out. I tend to, and I learned this from the Hardy Boys experience, I tend to end chapters on little cliffhangers, sometimes bigger cliffhangers, between Jack Kirby's bottom corner panel, where it'd be something like, and you'd have to turn the page, right? The page turner, to see what, is he going to hit that? Is it going to, what happened? He fell off the building. Is he going to, and you had to turn. Same thing with these chapter endings. And I learned that a lot through that.
Well, the phrase is very aptly called page turners.
Yeah.
Because that's their job. And let's talk about pacing there for a moment, because I will say to my students, in terms of writing short films and short stories, how you structure your tale. When you're doing something that's lengthier, when you're doing a novel, when you're doing a full feature film, you can start slowly. You can ease your audience or your readership into the story on a more subtle basis, and you can begin to reveal some exposition and the conflict with a little bit more of a slower pace, if you so choose. But when you're doing short stories or short films, then you understand that one of the two things, you can start it out still slowly, but you got to get to what's happening. You got to get to the inciting incident fairly quickly. And then you got to keep moving because you only have that amount of time or that number of pages to get it done. So I know that with me, yeah, cliffhangers or page turners were absolutely key for almost every chapter until the final one, obviously. And the other thing was understanding that the conflict needed to be stated within, at least in terms of the chapters, within the first chapter. By the end of the first chapter, we knew what the conflict was. And then it was a matter of how are they going to deal with this struggle? And you're going to put in at least 2 or 3 times where they stumble and fall, stumble and
Right.
fall. So boom, they get it. And now there's a chase scene or a climactic reveal, and then there's resolution. So you can even look at it as a 3-act play. Act one, introduce characters, the world, and the conflict. Act two, see the struggle and the character's journey in trying to deal with this adversarial situation. And then there's a climax in Act three. The climax comes to a conclusion. You get resolution and then the absolute end of the story, the conclusion, whether it's happy, sad, or whatever. And yeah, you can do this if you set it up. You can do it in 140 pages. And if you do it right, it feels like a really great ride or a really great read.
And we are talking here about generations of successful paperback, beloved reads that have followed this kind of size, this kind of pacing. Now, Alex mentioned, I just want to tease Alex for a minute.
Oh, sure.
Alex mentioned the idea of you can ease in and set the stage and plant the seeds and introduce the setting and all that sort of stuff, and then get the story going. When Alex does it, it's a really powerful Porsche purring down the highway. When I do it, it's a Mustang floored and flying through the yellow light. So it's just a matter of taste. Both are really, hopefully, I believe they are, but both hopefully very entertaining to the reader. But it's so you do have space to be you. But especially if you're working with established characters, it has to be recognizable as that. But what we're seeing here today, these days, is that all these writers are writing their own stories with their own characters in that same kind of short pace. You were talking about the setup and structure, and I wanted to remember, what was Doc Savage's author? Kenneth Robeson?
Yeah, Robeson, if I remember correctly.
And what was it? That was his nom de plume. What was his real name?
Oh, goodness. Let me look it up because I don't
All
have
right.
it on the tip of my
So
tongue.
he has, and you can get this online. It might be Kenneth Robeson's, but I think he has his real name there, and it says his outline.
Henry W. Ralston. Where's that coming from here?
That's not him, no.
No, hang on here. Creator is Lester Dent.
Yes, Lester Dent's. Lester
Okay.
Dent. You can look up Lester Dent's story structure, right? And he says, introduce your characters, and by page so and get them in as much trouble as you can. And then from, say, page 12 to page 75, continue to get them into more and more trouble. And then the twist comes out that they get, and that's an oversimplification. And he goes into more detail. But he did that for 181 novels at this length. It's very flexible structure. You can get enough detail in so people get a feel for the world, and the pacing won't lag. And I'm thrilled that it's making some kind of a quiet comeback. Be on the lookout for that. And
I would like.
do you have anything to add there,
Yeah,
sir?
I was just going to say that this is a personal taste thing that I'm about to say here, folks.
This is the Porsche.
Yeah. Okay.
Porsche talking.
You can definitely do all the things that we have talked about and that we've seen other writers who we admire or at least enjoy their work have also successfully done, which is to give a nice compact quality read or experience. The thing that I would caution you against is feeling like in order to keep the engine racing or purring or however you want to look at that, that you throw in a lot of gimmicks, you throw in a lot of shock value, you throw in a lot of stuff, because stuff is not really great writing. Stuff is stuff. Stuff begins to read like gimmicks. Stuff begins to sound like one-dimensional characters or sensationalism. I think that you can write good horror, good adventure, good mystery, good sci-fi, or good romance, and keep your audience engaged, entertained, on the edge of their seats, all of those things, as long as you put in the effort to tell a good story and
Yes.
remain true to your characters and let them be as authentic as you're capable of portraying them. But to start saying, oh, maybe I should have a visceral situation here when someone's gutted and everything, and there's blood all over the place. Well, if you're writing splatter horror, then that's your thing. That's what you're doing. But if you're writing something that's an adventure tale and it doesn't call for that, but you throw it in there because you think you need to blow it up somehow, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're
Right.
doing your characters and your story a disservice, and therefore you're disrespecting your audience.
Right.
So again, try and qualify what you do to heighten the pacing or the excitement and everything. Try to qualify it with, is this for real? Is this necessary? Is this really serving the story? Or am I just looking desperately for something to throw in here?
That, Alex, that last point there is exactly the smell test or the rule of thumb. You can have as much stuff as you desire, but every single piece of that stuff, every explosion, every knife out of the dark, etc., you must ask yourself, does it serve the story? Does it advance the story? Does it make sense in the context of this particular story I am writing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're writing a blackjack story set in 1937 and a Boeing airplane falls out of the sky, it is not serving the story, right? If if you're writing a serious Batman, modern Batman story, and you have him reach into his cape and pull out the bat shield, you will be laughed out of the DC offices because that's not in the Bible now. That's not the concept of the character now, right? Does it serve the story? And I'm going to throw in a sex scene. These people never met and they're going to fight to the death, but first, the sex. What? It doesn't serve the story. Yeah, but it's hot sex. That's great, but you've been going breakneck down a river fighting giant snakes, and there's three tribes on each side shooting at you, and you're going to, in the middle of that sex scene. Doesn't make any sense. Has it been done? Yes. Does it suck? It still sucks. Even if it's a bestseller or a blockbuster film, it still sucks. So you have to ask yourself, do I want my stuff to suck or do I want it to make sense?
This concept here about the shorter stories, did you happen to notice with this particular one that sort of started this whole thing for you? Did you notice what genre they're dealing with?
The TikTok that I saw was, I think it was 7 horror, you know, under 150 pages. And they would just show the cover and then go like that and show the cover. And it registered me for me that Haley Piper was amongst that because
Ah,
she is emerging as a highly influential, really, I would say popular and growing in popularity writing. And she is handling many of the social issues that are on the cutting edge now while writing variety of fantastic horror fiction.
so
Real
she's dealing with social issues and whatever she feels is
in the horror genre, yeah.
yeah, in within the horror genre, which
Yeah.
again you can do, and yes, obviously you
And
can do in 140 pages.
yeah, and this one happened to be 149 pages, but
Hmm.
some of her other novels are longer. She also is very much in demand for anthologies. Her name will sell additional copies of that anthology, so that really, oh wait, this is an interesting concept. And then how many times we have seen this kind of thing. I thought it was a worthwhile topic. Now, it's also a great writing exercise because writing a 300 or 400-page novel requires, and making it interesting throughout, requires a different set of skills than 149. And by the way, Haley can do both excellently well. But it's the same thing for a short story. A different set of skills. I just submitted a 700-word, it was probably 698 words, just little short. There's this Shotgun Honey is the name of the website, and they do these little 700-word things on the front of their website, and then it helps. You can say I have a credit with Shotgun Honey and all that stuff. And it was one, I just got a rejection from the publisher there for a story that they said it's some really great writing in here, but this one part I didn't like. And out of respect and gratitude for taking the time to say that, I rewrote that one part and resubmitted. Whether they want it that way or I ever want to see it again or not, the first thing I wanted to do was to show them my gratitude. That's 700 words, and it requires a different set of writing muscles. So write it all. Write the little 700. There's also a thing called a drabble, which is about 100 words. Writing a story in 100 words is a whole different thing. Twitter has, or X has, 7 words or 10 words.
Well, Hemingway did 6.
Yes.
And that's always the thing that I say to myself when I'm getting ready to start on something short, is I remind myself he did it in 6. I can do it in, and then fill in the number.
For sale, baby shoes, never used.
Never worn.
Never worn. Yeah. And you can take so much out of that. Yeah. So it's all an exercise, and it's all about helping you tell your damn story. Right. And now that feature that Alex was talking about. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's what we like to call around here. We're just going to name this now the lightning round.
So we have, as we did in previous episodes, we have some questions that come to us from our students and clients. And I thought, we'll take a few and we'll answer them here as well. So I have one for you, Chris. How do you write personal stuff, things that you've experienced in your life, but they're really deeply personal? How do you write about that in a fictional story or in a story that you're working on? How do you do that and not feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? I get uncomfortable or whatever. How do you do that?
I'm glad you asked, Alex.
Oh, I'm glad you're glad.
I have just rebooted City of Woe, rewritten so much I had to change the name to Mallory and Gunner City of Woe. And in that book, one of the characters, Frank Mallory, is married to a wonderful Italian woman and has 2 sons. And his father is dying of cancer. And he's got a couple of siblings. So the people who knew me outside of writing would say, this is like a memoir. But once they read it, they was like, this is nothing like a memoir. So here's the deal. If you're going to take from your personal life for a story, you got to go back to the questions we told you to ask about your writing earlier this episode. How does it serve this particular story? Because I didn't do that for Genius High, and I didn't do that for A Simple Rebellion. But for City of Woe, which is an echo or an homage to Dante's Inferno, hell, I asked myself, what would hurt this character most? What would hurt me most? Causing harm or fearing that my wife and children would come to harm would be unbearable pain. So one, I could not write. This woman could not be exactly glorious. And they could not be exactly Seamus and Nunzio, not their real names. So I took aspects, right? Gina in the City of Woe, Mallory's wife, is much more outspoken than Glorious is. Glorious is very mellow, and she'll quietly rip my argument to shreds. But she's not a stamp her foot kind of gal like Gina can be. Kieran and Max, I only took certain attributes of my sons. One, they were sons. And the Kieran character, like Sean, loves sports, especially baseball. And then that's it. He's very different. And by City of Pain, very different. And Max, Tyler has always had a Sean. I used to call them fact and fiction because Sean was very fact based and baseball stats and numbers and how things work. And Tyler ran with the fiction. He loved Ultimate Spider-Man and Robin. Whenever I did the two scenes, you could use that, the fact and fiction aspect, and then I made them different than my own children because I couldn't write that much pain. And then by City of Pain, which is about purgatory, everybody is in pain. The Kieran character became very angry and would be in the backyard firing pitches into a pitchback, boom. And Sean never experienced that. So that character is fully its own by now. And Max suffered night terrors and discovers Robin, which gives him some hope. You start with what your own experience is, but then you have to play with it and extract from it what would work fictionally. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, good. I got another one for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do you structure a novel if you don't believe in outlines and you're writing by the seat of your pants?
Okay, I'm going to quote Stephen King because for years, Stephen King says, I don't outline. I don't plan. I'm more of a pantser. And on bended knee, as a beloved constant reader of Stephen King, I politely call bullshit. Because in an interview within the last 5 years, he said something that confirmed my suspicions of all pantsers and echoes Joyce Carol Oates. So I'm going to tell you what Joyce Carol Oates does and then what Stephen King does. So this is the secret of pantsers. Joyce Carol Oates said, I was at a seminar on the Southampton Writers Conference, and she was a guest, and she was talking about how before she writes a word, and if you don't know what Joyce Carol Oates is, Google that and just see how much
How
she
many
has
books
written.
she has written
Oh
over
my
the years?
God.
Yeah.
And God bless her. She's built like olive oil. God bless her. And she's a runner. What she said was, before I write a word of any of my writing projects, I go running. And every day as I go running, I tell the story that I'm going to work on to myself in my head as I'm running. And if I stumble on something in her head, she fixes it and then continues with the story. And then she doesn't write a word of it until when she's running, she can tell herself from beginning to end the whole story without stumbling on anything. That's pre-writing. That's plotting. Now, the legendary Stephen King said in an interview recently, says, when I'm working on a possible idea, I tell myself the story as I'm going to sleep. And when I can tell myself the whole story, then I know it works. That's plotting.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
story structure. So those of you who say you are pantsers and you're just making it up as you go on the fly, have at it. And you will find yourself in the desert of despair somewhere in the middle of the book, because we all do. But people who have planned it out a little bit can go back to their plan and say, oh, yeah, how am I going to get there? Yeah. And then you have a lifeline.
Find that oasis in the desert.
Yeah. And if you say, I'm not writing out an outline, but I'm going to tell myself in my head, I'm going to think about it while I'm mowing the lawn. God bless you. Go with God. That is planning it out in your head. At this point in my rapidly aging life, I don't know if true pantsers exist, and if they do, how much they're doing interior plotting. So that's my answer.
I would say also that whether you consider yourself a pantser or not, if you are taking on writing a story of any length and you don't think it through, then you are fumbling in the dark.
Yeah.
And there may be one out of 20 that can make it through that journey and come up with something satisfying, something that actually works and can appeal to an audience base and all of that. And I may be presumptuous in making that statement, but I do believe that any writer who really is out to serve this story will, in some way, shape, or form, tell that story to themselves, work through
Yeah.
aspects of that story so that they can make it to the end and then discover that rewrites are your friend
Yeah.
because you've
I
done
mean,
that.
there's some very successful authors who have said, I know the ending. I know where I'm going to end up. And then I write my way towards that. And sometimes it's a little sloppy and I have to rewrite. There's still, if you know the ending, if you know where you're going, then you're really
Yeah.
only quasi pantsing,
Yeah.
you know? All right.
Uh,
What else do we have?
we got one more. What's the most important thing that you must be able to do after the story is finished?
Okay. Finished isn't done. You got to sell it. And whether you're selling it to yourself as an independent, and I will talk about what that entails, or if you're selling it to a publisher, it depends on the length of the story. But let's not talk about going for the gold and requiring an agent and all that. That's a whole different set of rules for different. But you and I don't work with agents per se, so we find publishers who are interested in this kind of stuff, and we pitch them
Mm-hmm.
and we send it and we sweat out until they say, yeah, this is what we want, or we like this, but we'd like these changes. And then you have that series of decisions to make. Can Blackjack be a girl in 1999? No, that's not who Blackjack is, right? Or can we add a kid to the story to amp up the empathy a little bit? Yeah, we could probably jam a kid in there somewhere. Sure. Put them in the tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I
Put
did.
3 of them in there, right?
Which I did, yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Blackjack, 3 Russian kids, and a Russian gym coach in a tank in a forest on fire.
With an army after him. Yeah, yeah,
Nazis.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be done. And also, if you're independent, as you and I know, you have to get out there and you have to get your stuff seen, do readings. You do what you do really well at conventions. Sometimes that's panels, sometimes your booth where you go, hey, how you doing? And the meet and greets or the just being available to people at conventions. All of these things advance. You also you meet other publishers, you meet other people who say, wow, I really like this stuff. I wonder in this anthology if he would do that. You yourself, not that we can talk about it right now, but there's some anthologies coming that you're a part of, and it grew out of some of the other stuff that you did, right? Please remember that a writing career is like a snowball rolling downhill.
Yeah.
If it's new snow, it's going to gather and get a little bigger until it just slams Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, those are the things you have to do. And sometimes it takes a lot of just getting out there and smiling. And other times it's butt in seat learning. This week I've been learning a particular new program that will help me position my books for easier discoverability. You are doing some studying on how we can make this podcast more satisfying to our current audience and hopefully expand it. These are the ongoing things. You must always continue to grow and to get better to serve your stories. Help
Absolutely.
you tell the damn stories.
Right. I'll only add to that again, your reason for writing is going to determine what your next action is. Because if you're writing for your own satisfaction, that's fine. Then you get to enjoy what you've accomplished and move on to the next project. But if you're writing to achieve a position in a professional field, then yeah, all the things that Chris said are absolutely necessary. You have to evaluate whether or not the work that you've just completed is up to standards, whatever those standards are that you've set, or the standards that you of a company or an agent or whomever you might be attempting to present that material to. Is it of professional quality, or certainly, again, up to standards for it to be accepted on that level? And if you are independently producing your material, then, as again, Chris says, you need to look at the market, you need to look at how to promote it, you need to look at how to make contact with potential customers and clients and all of that, to look at it as, okay, I've done the art, I've done the creative end of that. Now I have to do the business and identifying that this is the business aspect of my pursuit. And just be clear about it. Switch hats and be clear about that. So that's the answer to those 3 questions this week. And I know that there's a few more in the bucket that we'll get to in our next show. Absolutely.
And Alex, I would say that the bucket is got room.
Yes, that's true.
So if anybody has other questions, they can put it in the comments. They could send it to our social media, our email, whatever, and we'll add it to the bucket and get it on the story.
Yeah, so maybe your question will be in there, and we'll get to that next time.
Just let us know if you want us to use your name.
Yes,
Maybelline from Duluth, Minnesota asks.
Billy Bob Thornton. No. So again, Chris, as always, this has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Always an honor to be in your presence, sir.
Oh, gosh darn, fellow. And what do you tell the people to do, or at least suggest?
If you liked what you saw today or heard today, please help us help you by smashing that like and the subscribe so you can help us keep telling you tell the damn story.
One of these days we're going to choreograph that. It's going to be harmony and everything.
We have to do.
So be with us next week. Chris, adios.
Sir, you have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, yes,
or whenever this is airing.
Yes, that's right. I think I will go out and barbecue something.
There you go.
Take care, everybody.
Catch it first.
Bye-bye.
See you. Peace.